Welcome guys to another Geometry Dash editor tutorial. In this one, this video is going to be for complete beginners. If you have just started using the editor and you have no idea what's going on, this video is going to be for you. I am simply going to show you a bunch of things that you can do in your level to kind of just make it a bit cooler, like a bunch of things that you might have always wondered about, like how to change the color of the background, or really some very simple stuff that some of you guys are going to find helpful. So to start off, there is this settings button up here, and as always, all of my tutorials are super beginner friendly, so you guys can follow along and we're going to do everything step by step. And in here you can basically see how the level is going to begin. So the level is going to begin with a blue background. If you click on here, you can change it. However, what I recommend doing is actually clicking on this plus, because now you can change the color in here and actually see the color live being changed. And now if you start the level using this button, you're gonna see that your level starts with a green background, which is cool, but I'm gonna make it kind of more bluish. Let's do like that. That's pretty cool. Orange. And the same with ground. So ground stands for this guy down here, so you can change it to maybe yellow. I like to have the ground darker than the background. This is just me. So, and then there is ground 2, and what the ground 2 is, you can see you change the color, nothing happens, and that's because there are two types of grounds in Geometry Dash. So if you click on here, there's background and there's also ground. If you click on here, you can choose which ground you want to start your level with. So for example, if you want to start as a hexagon, you can click on this and then okay, and you can see your ground is hexagon. However, you can see that all of these ones only have one color ground, it's red. However, if you go on to the next one, so all of these guys, they have two colors, and that's very cool. I would always recommend using one of those guys, because now if you click on the plus sign, you can see that this ground actually has two separate colors. And yeah, you can see that if you want to have grass, you can do grass, and maybe, you know, a bit of dirt down there, or maybe a bit of lava as well could also be pretty cool, like maybe something like that or something. You guys can choose whatever you want. And then there's a line, and line is basically how this line is. So you can see that it's basically just like this object right here. It's just like this one, but like that, right? So this is the line right now, and you can change it to make it more like this object right here, like that. Or if you don't like that, you can make it 3, which I think is just a bit too thick. Like this doesn't look too good. I always like to use 1, maybe 2 if it feels like it. And you can change the speed of how the level should start, and of course the game mode and the background, we can't forget about that. However, the background only has one color, so there's no background color 2 or something. But if you want to make like a cool 2-color background, you gotta use the gradient trigger. I have a specific tutorial on that, but we're not gonna get too specific with that. So now let's actually make our ground kind of cool, like that. Make it red, lava, cool. And now if you want to change things mid-level, if you have like a background that you want to change the color of, or an object that you want to change the position of, if you want to move something, or if you want to, you know, change the opacity of certain objects, or pretty much anything you want to do live in the level, you would use something known as triggers, and those guys are completely invisible in game. So if I place this one and play, you guys are going to see that this object is not visible in the game. So if you go on here, this object just doesn't show up. So those guys are just for changing the properties of things inside the level. So if you place a color object and then click on edit object and then click on this plus sign, you can choose to change the background color. So this trigger basically changes the color of something. You can change the color of the ground, background, and all of these things, but the background, we're going to use it to change the color of the background to white. You can change white, and you can change the color in here. However, there's also a secret. You can click on this button right here, and now you guys can see that we can change it using this guy, and you can also see that there is this line. And if you don't have this line, simply go up here, settings, and then enable duration lines. And now if you go back, you should see this line, and what this line is the duration of that trigger. So this trigger has a duration of 0.5 seconds. So from this point on here, you're gonna see that as soon as we hit it, it's gonna start changing color, and as soon as it ends, it's gonna be completely blue as we have set it. And what's cool in here is that you guys can see that there are these secret lines. There's like a black line that's very kind of hidden, you can say, in the background. You can see if I move my camera a bit, you can see that that there are two lines, one vertical and one horizontal, and those lines are very, very important. So this line right here is basically where your position is right now in the level. You guys can see when this line right there hits this trigger, that's when it's going to start. So this is your like midpoint, you can say, and this is where it's going to stop. So it's very important to know what that is. So changing the color of this guy, you can copy and paste it, put it in here, and then edit object, change color of the ground one, which will change the guy down there. Want to make it black, and now copy and paste, by the way, Control D on PC, or this one if you are on mobile. So edit object and then ground 2. Let's make ground 2. Yeah, actually we can make everything black, why not? That's pretty cool. And if you want everything to happen at once, you can just do that. So that's very, very cool. Now another thing you might have seen in the editor is that there is this white line over here, and this white line is basically where the level is gonna start. So if you do settings in here and then we disable hide path, so we basically show the path of the player, you guys are gonna see that the player starts exactly on here. And what that means is if you want to start your level having a zoomed out screen, you would basically just put this zoom trigger right there and click on edit object and change it to maybe 0. Let's do 0.6, and now it's going to change the zoom of the level in 0.5 seconds, bring it to the value that you want. And by making this completely 0, it's going to start as already zoomed out, which is really, really cool. And you can also use the offset to kind of change the offset of the camera. So if you wanted to kind of be your icon, make it like that here instead of there, you can do that as well, which is cool. So yeah, everything you put behind this line basically gets triggered before the attempt even starts. So instantly everything just happens. Also for platformer guys, actually let's do this video only for classic, and maybe for like another episode we can do one specifically for the platformer guys. So let's say you want to have an orb, right? You're in classic mode and you want this orb to send you backwards. So you want to go like that, click and then go back, and you can easily do that by clicking on the orb, edit group and then extra, and then you can see a sneaky button called reverse. There are a lot of buttons in here, but pretty much like 80% of those are just for platformer mode. So if you're just specialized in classic mode, you just please don't be scared. And if you're specialized with platformer mode, then also don't get scared, because I make a lot of tutorials. You are very fine. So now you guys can see if I hit it, I'm simply just gonna go backwards, which is just exactly what we want. So we're gonna go back now. It's great. And you can do that for these guys as well. So if you put it in here, you can see a reverse button. Make sure you click on extra and not extra 2. Very, very awesome namings right there from Rob. So now this should maybe this is gonna kill me, I don't know. No, it works pretty cool. Okay, we can actually just do this, and yeah, now we're going back, up and back, and that's pretty neat. And in case you guys have been wondering how some people make something go, if you're on a ship, you enter the ship and you want, let's say this is not zoomed out at all, so I'm just gonna bring this back to 1, or delete the trigger, really it's just the same. So now you guys can see that there's no free fly mode. And why is that? How do I make it free fly mode? Well, you can simply click on the portal and edit object. This is a secret button right there, and free fly mode, and then edit camera settings, and you can change the settings in here, but if you don't want to, just disable that. And by enabling free mode, it's basically going to make this like that, and it is awesome. However, you guys can see that I have to fly up a lot in order for the camera to start moving. So if there was like let's say there was a saw blade right there, I wouldn't be able to see it and I would just die to it. So I would highly recommend playing around with the edit camera settings. So maybe do a bit more padding, the easing, make it a bit more, and now you guys can see yeah, it's a bit better, but you can still play around with it. Or if you want to, you can use the triggers. You guys know how to use some of the triggers now, and just give it a bit more time and use this ease in and out. It just makes it a lot smoother. So look at this. So now it's gonna zoom out. Very, very cool. So that's how you make your portals basically be free fly mode. And if let me just quickly show you what these orb buttons are for, in case you guys didn't know. So the D block is actually only useful for the wave game mode. So the wave game mode is this guy, and you guys might have noticed that if you have a block like that, and now if you die or if you touch it, you're going to die. And to make sure that your wave actually lands on it, you have to place these D blocks. Now keep in mind, those blocks are also completely invisible in the game, so you can't see those. Those are just for you to set up. So we want to select a lot of D blocks and just place them like that, and then move everything like this. So, and And now you guys can see that we can simply make the wave, you know, just walk casually on top of these blocks that would otherwise completely demolish our wave. And that's very, very cool. And now let's move on. This object, you have to know what this is. Like, a lot of people don't use it and it's really annoying. it's there for a reason. So let's say you had something like a red orb and then maybe something like that. And then they had like a black orb up there, right? So like that. Yeah, that's a bit too much. So like so. And then you had a platform like that. Now it doesn't have to be exactly that specific. I'm just going to show you exactly what it is in a bit. So I'm just doing an example right now. So what you want to do is you know how you click this guy and then your icon jumps. So let's say you had, I don't know, like a wall right there. And so like the player usually just gonna click and they're gonna hold for a bit of time, which is gonna lead the icon to jump, which is not that very cool. So you're gonna have to kind of like time it, which is kind of annoying. If you're like having a blind transition or so, you wouldn't really be able to see that spike up there. So in order to fix that, you can place these J blocks, and what these are gonna do is that if the player is landing and he was holding, he's actually not going to jump. And then you guys can see I can just keep holding after clicking that and my player is just not going to jump. It's just so much more fun instead of having to die there and restart the attempt from the beginning. That's very, very cool. And also to use these guys, you just have to make sure that the area you want this effect to be on to be inside this guy. So you can maybe scale it up if you want to and just place it like that, and boom. So is pretty cool. However, you guys will notice that if we change this to a crazy size and maybe place it like that, it might not work. Yeah, so I am inside the block, but it didn't really work. And why is that? It's because scaling things could get a bit weird in GD. So if you scale objects too much or too little, you actually have to go to edit group and then extra and then extended collision. This is a lifesaver, and what it does is it basically makes the calculations a bit more complicated for the game, which basically just means that it's going to take this exact size that you actually have selected, which means now it even calculates for that specific thing, which is, you know, pretty cool. You can save a bit of objects here and there, which, yeah, that's very cool. I'm actually just gonna place this right there so you guys can remember what the J blocks are. And now we have the S blocks, which are very important to stop dash orbs. So let's say you had a dash orb here, pretty cool, and then you had like a platform in here that you wanted the player to kind of land on, right? Let's say something like that. So, and then you jump, and now let's say there was like a ship portal in here, and then you gonna just dash, jump, and then go like that. And some people might just hold this guy and just skip this guy, which is not that very cool. So you can use the S blocks to basically stop the player's dash. So you can place it like that, and if the player touches these guys, he's simply going to stop dashing. However, one thing that I like to say is that you have to, it's much better to just place hazards to manually make the player like stop dashing, so he doesn't have to, you know, all of a sudden just stop dashing for no reason, because again, those guys are invisible in the game. So if he doesn't see it and suddenly just his dash just stops working, it wouldn't be that cool. So you have to kind of try to make the player stop dashing on his own. Don't force it on him, but if it's like really necessary, you can just place an S block. That's a why not. All right, so the H block. The H block is also pretty cool. I don't see that many people using it, but yeah, it depends on what you want to do. So the H block is, let's say you had a block like so, right? And now you, let's move this away, and now you jump, you're gonna die because your head is hitting the top of the structure. So you can basically just spam these guys, which stands for H, I believe, is hold or something. So now you guys can see that the icon doesn't die after hitting these guys. And this also includes, you know, having these beautiful jump pads. So now you can slam this with your upper head, and yeah, nothing is going to happen, which is just really, really cool. So yeah, those are those 4 objects. Let's see if there is anything you guys would also like to, you know, learn a bit more about. Some things that are quite simple but very powerful once you know it. Okay, so the last thing I'm gonna touch over here is going to be something that has a lot of options as well. So let's say you had a level, and let's say there was a ship portal in here, and you kind of had like a, let's say like a transition where the entire screen goes to a certain color, and then you kind of like type the name of your level or pretty much anything, and then the level starts again. So in this specific time, you don't want the player to jump, right? Because let's say you had a spike there and a spike here or so, and then the player can't see anything playing and then he jumps and then he dies, right? That wouldn't be that very cool. So you want to make sure that the player has no control over the icon in that specific time. So to do that, you can use the so-called options trigger. So if you place it over here and then click on edit object, you can disable the controls for player 1. And what this is going to do is basically if you keep clicking, nothing is going to happen no matter what you do, unless you copy and paste this, place it in here and make it off. So now if I click, nothing is going to happen. And as soon as I enable it again, you guys are going to see that I am again able to click, which is just really cool. So the options trigger actually has a lot of different things. You can make the player hidden, you can show the player, and you can also hide the ground, which sometimes could be extremely useful. Like some people might just not know how to hide the ground, and this doesn't work in the editor. So let me just place an object bar, and in the game it actually hides the ground, as you guys can see now. Yeah, now we're walking on pretty much nothing. So yeah, that could be very useful for some of you. The streak additive, I don't really use that, it's very weird. You can hide the attempts, which is very cool. You can just place this trigger like at the very start, so like that. You can just put it in there, and then even if the player has this option is in his settings enabled or disabled, the attempts are just going to be hidden. You can remove the sound effects for the death. So there's every time you die there's this sound effect. You can get rid of that, and you can keep the song playing after you die by doing this one, and you can make the player respawn in the time that you want. So if you want him to respawn after 10 seconds, so we can see like that. If we just do that, you guys are going to see that if we start and play, and we have set the respawn time at 10 seconds. So now if I die, I'm gonna have to go to sleep for a bit, because this is gonna take some time until we actually go back. Now I wouldn't recommend using a high value here, because you guys can see it just takes eternity and it's really annoying. So yeah, if it's really necessary for your death effect, just use like a bit of a higher value, but you know, you can use 10 if you really want to. Just make sure you have edit respawn enabled. Boost slide, also nothing really that important. And yeah, I think that's it for this tutorial. You know, a lot of really useful stuff. Now you guys know a lot more about the editor if you guys were basic people. So yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this. Make sure to slap that like and also subscribe, and I will see you guys in one of those videos that's on the screen. So make sure to click one of them.